Alrighty, it is a pleasure to welcome to the show Rob Warner, MCLA All-American, an All-American and Hall of Famer, and the goalie that I learned from. Rob, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. Pleasure
Yeah,
to be here.
absolutely. Well, this is a pleasure. Before we hit record, we were saying it's been a good 15 years, since we've last seen each other, and this is a pleasure. This is awesome. It's great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. So I kind of going back to the beginning for those, for those that don't know you, like when did you first start playing lacrosse, and when did you first start when did you first become a goalie?
Well, San Diego, seventh grade, we had a middle school team, and back then it was weird. It was seventh through ninth grade. And so I was the only seventh grader on the team. I played middie. I was the only kid on the team that didn't score. And then so I was like, you know what? And then the goalie was a ninth grader, so he was going on. I was like, all right, well, why don't I try goalie, because I'm not that great at middie. No one else, and then so all my friends started playing at the next year in eighth grade, and I just got goalie gear and went to a camp, and that's kind of how it started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you like a lot of goalies when they first start out really scared of the ball? I know, like when I first jumped in there, I remember very specifically, like, our backup, he either got quit or he got hurt. And then Coach Proud, Joe Proud, says, Damon, you want to give goalie a try? And, I'm learning the position. I'm learning the sport. I'm like, hey, I might as well jump in there and give it a try. And then Jarrett Winfield, Judy, like rips one on me, And I just remember this feeling of like, oh my goodness, like what did I just sign up for? Is that something as a seventh grader that you had to deal with?
Yeah. So the first time I ever was in cage was at camp. I don't think they ever, sorry, as a rising eighth grader, I don't think they had any idea that I'd never done it before. And I remember it was like the first night of camp, and I'm in drills with guys that are now rising 10th graders and just ripping on me. It was like never had any lesson or a shot even taken on me before. And I'm in the middle of drills, first night of camp, and I remember just turning and getting pelted in the back. Just slammed right in the back. But yeah, well, Judy didn't really shoot very hard, so
It's true. That's true. He was a good face-off man, but he couldn't really rip it as well as some of the other guys.
Yeah, that 10th grader probably shot harder than.
That's true. That's true. So how did San Diego around that time? That would have been kind of late 90s, mid 90s, early 90s,
No,
I guess.
I graduated in 97, so that was probably like 93, 90, yeah, 92, 93.
Yeah, and was lacrosse pretty popular back then?
It was a niche sport, but it was decently popular. Like the middle school program, I would say it's better than it is today. Mm-hmm. Just because private companies and things like that have taken over. It was definitely like, okay, you played for your middle school in your area, and then you go to your high school. Nowadays, the middle school team is not based off the middle school. It's just like a little club type team. And then for the area that I was in, those kids are going, to 5 different high schools. They're not feeding into the program like they were. So like our team, when Todd Parker and I and his brother, and we all played for it, we were a really good team because we were feeding from that middle school program into the high school program. And nowadays, all those kids are going to private schools, and it's a different situation.
Yeah. So where did you, who taught you the ropes on how to play goalie? Like, where'd you learn all the basics?
So I used to go to a camp called Great Western. It's still being run at San Diego State. From there, I met a guy named Kevin Hicks, and he was from, I should know this. I used to work camp there all the time. What's the private school on Pebble Beach? Robert Louis Stevenson.
Yeah.
So he went to Robert Louis Stevenson, and he went to Yale, and he actually played there, which is odd because he's older than me. So it's very odd for a California kid to go play Division I. Yale was nowhere what it is now. Very cerebral, as you would imagine, going to Yale. So he came out to work the camp one year, and he said, hey, why don't you come to goalie camp back east. And so I started doing that. And that's kind of where I learned through him and through like a very goalie specific camp, how I learned what I learned. But his philosophy is, or was, and probably still is a save doesn't have to look like the greatest save in the world. You know, like the hardest save you should make, it should look easy. You know, you don't want to overdo everything. You know, this guy's lunging, and it should just be very technical, very precise, and not look like you just dove across the crease to make a save every time you make a save.
Right.
So it's simple. Like you got to make it as simple as possible. Make your job as easy as possible. Don't overdo it. And that's kind of like the philosophy. It's like, we don't need extra motion. We don't need extra movement. Make the easiest save you can make on any shot.
Yep. Yeah, 100% agree with, you know, the least amount of movement. And that's kind of why we're putting ourselves, you know, in good positioning as well, to be in a spot, to be able to make a save without, you know, like you said, without making a double move or without doing this big, exaggerated move when a small, simple one will work. So yeah, 100% agree with that. Awesome. And then what about high school? Did your high school have a team?
Oh yeah. We had a good team. Again, it was
You went to Torrey Pines?
No, Sarah High School.
Sarah, okay.
Yeah, my senior year, my junior year, we went 1-12. My senior year, we were in the championship game against Torrey Pines, and then the next year they won state championship.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and we had Spencer Wright on that team. He's a year below me. Who's a Twarthlon finalist at Syracuse, walk-on at Syracuse. A lot of guys from that team went to Sonoma. A lot of them.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of Sonoma guys, and then Todd and myself, you know, Cal guys. But a couple UCLA, or like one UCLA, one Cal Poly, but I swear there's probably 10 of them that went to Sonoma.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hence the intense rivals we had with Sonoma State. I want to touch on a little later.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider like looking at D1, D2, D3 programs, or was it Cal all the way?
So recruiting back then was obviously way different. So that goalie camp that I did also had a recruiting camp. So I went to that camp rising senior. You know, nowadays, if you're not signed by your sophomore year, you know, it's tragic. So I went to that. I got letters. The only recruiting trip I did was Fairfield. So I went on a recruiting trip there. He wanted me to sign real early, but I was in love with Cal. I was like, look, I got to try to see if I can get into Cal. So he was not happy with me because he wanted me to sign in like October. I had some other like D2, D3 interest, but I didn't want to do that. Being a West Coast guy, it was like if I was going to go somewhere, it'd be Division One. But I only had one serious look, and at the time, it was. I think there at that recruiting camp there was myself and another guy that ended up at Santa Clara. He was like an attackman. We're the only people from the West at that camp at the time, so it was very odd to get recruited at that time.
Yeah, I mean, like you said earlier, nowadays probably not so much. I mean, I know my high school's got a great program. I mean, they're sending kids to D1. So I'm sure same with the high schools down in San Diego. So probably not as uncommon nowadays. But yeah, back then, like it was the East Coast. It was the East Coast thing. And if there was a West Coast guy out there, it was odd.
Oh, it was nuts. I was like my buddy Spencer. He played in the. So his freshman year, he was like on the second or third line at Syracuse middie, and he dropped the ball at midfield in overtime and like the semis, and Quick Kesnich ripped into him. He's like, "What's this kid from California doing on the field?" It was like just tearing him up, and that was 99, and then 3 years later, he's a Twarthlon finalist, and it just never happened back then.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. I remember I remember him just tearing into him, and haven't had the best thoughts since then.
Yeah. Right. That's cool. So you end up getting into Cal. How did were you like, did the lacrosse team help you get in, or was it just pure academic merit, or did you let them know you were coming in there, or how'd that work out?
Yeah. So I think about it from time to time. It's like, I don't even know how I got in hold of the guys that were like the president of the team. Like, think back then, like, how do you even do that? Usually, like, you showed up and someone said, "Hey, do you want to play lacrosse?" I somehow got a hold of these guys, and they weren't there by the time I got there, but they had the tag system, like when we were in school. So I talked to them. I didn't talk to the coach. It was like right during the transition when Proud was taken over. I don't even think they hired Proud yet. So I got tagged. I probably needed it with my SATs. Like, I was a salutatorian, so I had the grades, but my SATs weren't that great. So yeah, that was just, I remember just talking to those guys on the phone every now and then, but I couldn't tell you how I found them. Yeah, it's like, how do you drive somewhere without like Google Maps nowadays or something like that? It's like,
right.
Get out the Rolodex.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, like, Cal is in the MCLA. It's a club program and doesn't have much pull, like in terms of, getting kids in who like a D1 or maybe a D2, D2 school. So we could kind of tag people, and that would maybe be enough to like push them over the top. Right. I mean, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. It was like a second read on your essay.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It wasn't very much.
All right, so they went through your essay second time, Rob, and they're like, "Yes, that's it. All it needed is 2 reads.
This is the one." Yeah.
This is the one.
So I don't even know if it needed it. Who knows? But I know I got the help, so that's all that matters. And Ned, speaking of that, Ned's doing an incredible job of recruiting. Like, he's getting kids from all over the country. It's just amazing.
I know. I follow Cal's Instagram, and they just posted something today or yesterday about like all these kids, and it's like St. Paul, like, all these like real lacrosse hotbeds of, it's crazy. It's awesome.
And I hate to go a little off subject, but so I was at the 2019 championship game when they played South Carolina. You look at South Carolina's roster, and it's like Landon, 5 guys from, the DMV area, kids from the island, like Long Island. It's crazy. Like, it's just like, hey, I want to go have fun, go to a good school and play good lacrosse, but not be a job. And so, I mean, the roster makeup of that South Carolina team was just amazing. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. The level of competition. I mean, the MCLA is a great option for a lot of goalies. For a lot of goalies. I mean, you and I played, we had like a tremendous experience. It's just so much fun getting to know a group of guys. And like you said, it's very competitive. Like, we're going Monday through Friday in season and sometimes extra work and going hard. But it's not quite the D1 level in terms of the commitment, but it is still very competitive lacrosse, right?
Very, very, very competitive. There's been so many guys that have gone through the MCLA. I mean, there's guys that have been drafted into, the pros, not with the new PLL, but that have come through. But yeah, going back to my recruiting story, when I went on my recruit trip, they had a really good goalie, and they had an okay backup, but the coach is like, yeah, we want to bring in 2 freshmen to fight for the job. I was like, okay, that's intriguing. I found out, later, they used to have like a lacrosse yearbook where it like showed everybody's recruiting class and all that stuff. They had 5 freshman goalies on the roster. The guys sitting here telling me they want 2 of us to come in and fight for it. They're only bringing 2 in. I'm one of the 2. They brought in 5. Wow. Probably the best choice I ever made because
that was the Fairfield. That was the Fairfield coach. Yeah. Oh man, that's scummy. How are you gonna lie to a kid? You're like, hey, I thought there was gonna be 2. Who are these other 3 guys here?
Yeah. Well, that time if I would have gone there, would have been 6 of us.
Oh, there you go.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, you would have beat him out, Rob.
So raw.
Still, yeah. That's cool. So you get to Cal, and when was your first year? 97?
97, 98. So 98 was the championship year. That was my second semester freshman year.
Oh, wow. And that was Coach Joe Proud's first year with the team.
It was the second
year with the team. Okay.
Yeah, second year with the team. We had a weird makeup of guys because basically all the guys that should have been seniors in '97 at Cal knew there was a transition between coaches, and they all just went abroad, or they took some time off or didn't play. And so all the seniors on that '98 team were basically fifth year guys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what was it about that team that was so special, do you think? I mean, I know, because then I joined the team the following year in '99, so I would know all of the juniors, and there was some that were then going into their senior year, and there were some elite guys, some elite. I mean, the Moon Brothers, Wiley, Nick Wilsey, some great lacrosse players. But what was so special about that '98 team, do you think?
I think it was the senior core.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I really wanted to go to Cal is because the WCLL used to have their championships in San Diego. So we go watch, and I remember watching the Cal team a couple of years prior. There's two teams that made it to the championship game, two different goalies, Al Mann. I don't know if you know him, but I remember watching those teams, and they were all awesome. And then all those guys should be gone for the most part. All the guys that, should have had a senior year before, and they were back we had our core group of freshmen, like you said, the Moon Brothers, Principi, Kreitz. There was a bunch of us to help fill in pieces that need to be filled in.
Yeah.
And those guys had already had experience winning the WCLLs. There was no national tournament at the time. So we had a really good freshman class, a really good senior class, and a good in-between class to kind of meld everybody together. And I think maybe, we went to the tournament, I coached my fifth year, so we went 5 years in a row. And I think, maybe our leadership as seniors wasn't as good as their leadership, and it didn't really help us push it over the top.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple heartbreaking years at nationals.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And then, so, the other thing is in that 98 game, I don't know, you probably remember, but you make in a championship game, you made like a last second save, right? Or was it in overtime? I couldn't find any tape of the game. So I'm just going off lore.
Well, I had one off the post.
Okay.
And then I made a save to win the game. Save, hit Alex Mass on a fast break. He comes down, hit JB Gruber on the doorstep for the game winner goal. Yeah, just one of those ones where it's just kind of like, if you could choose the perfect goal as a goalie, it'd be like save, fast break, hit the guy open midfield and just go.
To win the national championship, right?
Yeah. It was pretty legit.
That's cool. When you got to Cal that year, did your goalie game change at all? I mean, we didn't really. I mean, at least when I was there wasn't like a goalie specific coach. Like, Coach Proud and some of the assistants would work with us goalies, but there wasn't like, a goalie on the coaching roster.
No, it was. I think it was most of it was from what I had learned through Kevin Hicks, who I call my mentor. And then I worked camp too, and working camps, I think really helps, especially for a younger guy. Because if you don't have a goalie specific coach, going to camp and teaching guys and listening to other people teach, even though you're not taking shots all day, it helps, but I think by the time I got to school, I was pretty much dialed in on my technique stuff. It was just moving up to higher caliber players. Proud. I love Proud so much, but he came back from lacrosse convention one year and he tried to get me to change something up. that didn't last very long. He wanted me to sight the ball off my thumb, which is fine, but that's not what I did.
Mm-hmm.
He tried to give me like a little bit more, I'm more of a off your hip, off your shoulder. I think now you're a little bit more straight up, but he wanted my hand like basically in front of my face like
Mm-hmm.
that. I can't see the ball.
How would you describe your style of goal play? I mean, you're definitely a big guy, but how would you describe like your stance and sort of how you attack the ball?
Yeah, bigger now than I was then. I try to keep my right hand off my right shoulder, my left hand off my left hip. So a little bit more this way. Sorry. Mm-hmm. A little bit more like that. That way I use my left hand as kind of a lever. And I can punch with my right coming across. Again, my theory, and if you have a setup where you're on your left hand's on your right side, you're crossing over your hands. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you're here, if you're off your hip, I'm just moving here. Just this simple move over. That's my style. Different. Some people are more in front, which is fine. That's actually, I would say, better than the people that you see the guys with their way over here on this side.
Way off to the side. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're trying to make everything as efficient as possible. If I'm way over here and I need to make a save way over here, it's a lot longer to go that way. Mm-hmm. I probably had a decently high arc. I was not a flat arc guy. My arc would definitely change depending on where the shooter was. I'd definitely be a lot higher arc. I didn't play as traditional. I tried to stay on an arc, but I would come out of my arc for a higher out shooter. Mm-hmm. In stance, it's just, if you're too wide, you're not going to be able to step. If you're too short, if you're too shallow, your step's going to be too big. So I like kind of just a normal stance. I mean, if you look, didn't you play catcher or shortstop?
Yeah, infielder.
Infielder.
Yeah.
Those are the best guys to turn into goalies. I think that's one of the reasons Proud and I said, hey, let's try Damon.
Yeah.
Because, but when you think of it, if you're an infielder, you don't want a super wide base and you don't want to be super close in. You want to have just a normal athletic stance. These too wide, too in close, you're not going to be able to make the move that you need to save the ball, or you're going to be not efficient with your thing. And that's, again, always be as efficient as possible, make the save as easy as possible.
Yeah. I love it. And it's interesting because I don't know if we ever specifically spoke about that, about that technique, but I just kind of watched how you played. And I'm like, all right, this is how we set up in the stance. This is kind of how we come out at a shooter. And just really adapted that sort of into my own game. And it, sort of morphed a little bit as I got more comfortable with certain things over time. But that's kind of how I learned. And that's how a lot of other young goalies learn, is just by watching other goalies and kind of seeing what they do and emulating their game and throwing out what doesn't work, kind of keeping what does work.
Yeah, you become your own goalie. I tell that to any kid that I start with. It's like I said, I'm going to try to teach you how to do this as efficiently as possible. It might not be right for you. It might not ultimately be what you want to do or what you feel the most comfortable with, but take as much as you can and apply it to your game. With you and I, do we have 2 years when I was playing, or 1 year and then 1 year coaching?
We had two overlapping years.
But 1 year you played middie though.
My freshman year, I started out as a middie and converted to goalie that year.
And then with Ashwin, right?
Yeah, he. So let's see. He was behind me. But when I was a junior, he was a freshman.
Yeah. So, we'd have when I was playing, we're getting warmed up. And then I'd give you we'd have a little 3-minute coaching clinic, and then we had to move on through practice. It wasn't like you and I were doing an hour-long session or something. So it's I became like the de facto goalie coach while playing, bringing up yourself and Ashwin,
Yep.
which was fun just to watch you guys. I remember, just watching you guys get through it all. It was incredible to watch that. You don't see that really as much anymore in the MCLA. I had that situation a few times at USD when I was coaching, where it's like, we didn't get anybody in this year. We got to figure it out with someone that's willing to do it. I probably went through 8 goalies at USD just because we didn't have any kids coming in.
Yeah.
So it's incredible to watch someone go from no experience to being an all-star level goalie within like a year or two at the college level. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. I mean, great coaches for starters. And I just really I fell in love with the sport, as I'm sure, you did as a young kid. It's like, I played a lot of sports growing up, but nothing had like this combination of camaraderie, like the strategy, the physicalness, just the ability to get better, like on your own, but then also with the team. I just loved it. And so,
yeah,
I was all about it. Do you remember my very first save?
We talked about this, and then you reminded me the slashing penalty.
Yep.
Against Colorado State.
Colorado State. So I switched to goalie like a week earlier. Well, the first 3 or 4 games I played middie. I switched to goalie a week earlier, and Colorado State, which was pretty good at the time, right? Like they were like
rival.
3 seed, 4 seed. We were number 1 coming off that national championship.
Yeah.
And you got a slashing penalty, and Coach Proud with like big excited eyes is like looking down the line. He's like, "Damon, you're in." I'm like, "What? I'm in." And run out there and just, first shot, boom, right off the face mask, right off the face mask. And then second shot, they try and sneak one in. I don't even move, hits me right in the leg. And I'm like so nervous. I'd like throw it out of bounds, but then that was back when they had horns, and they, did a horn, and you came back in, and I got the game ball. It's awesome.
I think
I was hooked.
You remember how fired up Proud got? That's probably one of his most fired up moments that I've seen. I saw him in 5 years, but I didn't think he was going to let me back in.
Yeah.
He was so mad at me for getting a penalty, and B, like, you'd made these 2 saves, and he like couldn't, like, he couldn't, like, his excitement was so crazy. It was hilarious.
Hey, you got to ride the hot hand,
Yeah.
That's funny. You mentioned, Love and Proud so much. How was your guys' relationship, and what were some of the lessons that you learned from him?
I broke my finger freshman year fall ball. I broke my pinky. He wouldn't let me out of the fall ball scrimmage against like Marin club team because we had no other goalies. And he's like, "Well, what are we going to do?" So I think he gave me, a lot of toughness in that aspect. I remember before goalie gloves, bit my thumbnail back in a playoff game against Stanford that season. And I remember coming to the sideline, we had a guy, Teal. You probably remember Teal. He was kind of like our de facto backup. He played ice hockey goalie. Teal jumps in for like one series, less dramatic than when you were there. But I remember just on the sideline and the trainer just popping my nail back in and like ready to go back in, and it was just, just kind of like, hey, we got to do whatever we got to do because this is where we're at. You were the first, backup that I had almost my entire, time playing lacrosse. So we didn't have the luxury of an injury. Kind of, it was like, we got to go here. And that was kind of his attitude, I think. And probably with him just in life in general, is like, it doesn't matter like what obstacles we have in front of us, we got to keep going forward.
Yeah.
And that's, that just his love for the game. I really don't know if I ever met anyone else that loved the game so much.
Yeah.
You know, had such passion for the game.
Every practice. Like, I mean, he showed up day in and day out, like, and you could just kind of see it in his eyes, just, you know, the fire for it. I 100% agree with that.
And he was a young coach then. You know, I think for us, we didn't realize, I mean, he was in his mid-20s. You know, it was like probably the first team he ever really coached. And he was trying to do it on the fly as well. You know, there's probably some stuff some guys didn't agree with, but there was also a way more better advice and knowledge that came out of him than those few little things that he was working through as a new coach.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I don't even know if I realized that, because at the time
you're
like,
for some
we
reason
just seemed so old.
Yeah.
And now, you know, we're in our 40s, and I'm like, man, 20 is that is young. That's interesting. You know, speaking of his passion, there's one story where he was giving you guys I think this is the 98 season, giving you guys a pre-game speech before the BYU game, and got like a little too into it. Can you kind of tell that story a little bit?
Yeah, Mike, Mad Dog. We were in, so it was like the first time BYU TV they were filming games and they were broadcasting them. You know, now we can easily get BYU TV. Back then we had somebody, they played Santa Barbara before us. Somebody in the Utah area recorded the game for us, so we had game tape. So they didn't want us out on the field doing all that kind of, you know, they wanted us to look like we came out of the locker room. We were in a classroom that probably was like the size of a middle school classroom. It was just like off the field. And he's in there and he's getting all fired up and he's foam at the mouth. You know, he's got the white foam and he's foaming up. And he kicks a little trash can about, you know, this big, and it hits Mad Dog right in the face. He's like got a bloody lip or nose, he's bleeding, and the crowd looks at him. He's like, yeah! He gets all fired up because there's like blood coming out of the guy's face. And he's like shaking him, and he's like trying to get everybody fired up. But that was proud right there, man. He's just, you know, kicking trash cans, hitting kids in the face, and think it's like spilling blood.
Yeah. Another thing he was really good at was, you know, those pregame speeches. I mean, I don't think I ever had a coach who could get like a group of men fired up the way that Coach Proud could. I mean, it was just like, you left that pregame speech, especially when we did this Bear's Blood tradition, which, you know, we're jumping up and down, we're drinking like quote unquote Bear's Blood, which is, you know, it's got a story behind it. And I don't think I've ever like been more pumped to play a game in my life than after a Coach Proud pregame speech.
Yeah. And I think that was a mix of Proud and those 98 seniors, because from my recollection, they're the ones that started that Bear's Blood thing. And Proud loved it. And so we had it all through the playoffs, all through championships. It was a canteen of Powerade, you know. Blue Powerade.
Yeah.
But it was definitely like, yeah, he grabbed that one and he was really good at it.
Yeah. The other funny story I have, so I don't think I've ever told this on the podcast, but my nickname on the college team was Gigs, right? Which was okay. That was shortened down from Giggles. And where that came from was Coach Proud, you know, we in the MCLA, you know, we kind of rented vans, and I was in Coach Proud's van, and we stopped for some food, and there was this like little girl like walking this dog, and she's like, Giggles, come here, Giggles. And Coach Proud like, that's awesome. We need someone on the team named Giggles. And he like turns to me, and I happened to be like right there. He's like, Damon, you're Giggles now. And you know, like the more you try and fight it, like the more people embrace that nickname. So just for a long time, people called me Giggles, and then eventually got shortened down to Gigs, which I was okay with.
Gigs is way better.
Gigs is way better, yeah.
Gigs is way better.
But
that's funny.
Man.
Well, it's just like the camaraderie that we had on those teams. You know, we called you we called you guys Matt Damon.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my
your roommate.
my best man at my wedding, Matt Smith. Yeah, we're a good combo.
Just one name, Matt Damon. Where's Matt Damon?
Where's Matt Damon? Yeah. Any other funny proud stories come to mind for you? Or no, don't even have to be funny.
Ones. I mean,
yeah, don't even have to be funny. It could be just
some of the stuff that he did, like he would make guys carry those like 75-pound goals around practice all around the. You'd probably get sued for it now. But they would have to remember, like, I think Jerem, it might have been one where they had to carry the goal around the field the entire practice because they got in trouble. Was that you? It wasn't you, was it?
No, it wasn't me. Yeah, it wasn't me.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah. Just stuff like that. I mean, there's probably things I probably shouldn't talk about on the podcast, as you know, but
I do remember one time I was late for practice and he made me do like the worm. I had to do the worm around the field for like 25 minutes as punishment.
Yeah. He came up with some pretty good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when we won the national championship, he had this. So back then it was a little looser. You know, we'd go out after that game and he wore a sombrero the entire night. Just a big sombrero.
Yeah. And to set context, I mean, he's an all-American defender out of Duke, 6'4", he's a big dude. He's a big dude.
Probably bigger than 6'4", handlebar mustache.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were out sombrero the whole night. We went to a Mexican restaurant after. He might have found it there.
Nice.
And took it with him for the rest of the night.
It was a different time back then. There's a lot of the stuff we did. We used to do haircuts for the rookies. Yeah. So like every rookie, basically, you know, we would do like a weekend getaway kind of team bonding thing. But then
first road trip.
First road trip. Yep. First road trip. Each rookie would get a haircut and they could cut your hair any way you wanted. Which I don't think would fly these days. Yeah, any way they wanted. Yeah.
Not the way you wanted.
Definitely not the way you wanted. So you're walking around Berkeley campus for a week just with these patches of hair shooting in all directions. And
see, they changed that. So my freshman year, it was the first road trip. And then you could shave it at the end of the road trip.
Oh, okay.
But then they decided that road trip, they were going to start dyeing the hair. So they got like blue and yellow dye. So I had like the old guy, Cascade Vince was mine. And one was like blue and one was gold. There were some very, you know, risque ones as well. But people, then you shaved your head, then you had these like stripes in your hair from the hair dye.
Yeah.
And then it was like the next year they decided, okay, we're going to make these guys wear it for a week after we get back. And if they did that now, you know, it'd be a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
you can't. Department. Yeah.
You can't do it now. I remember there was this guy on our team named Brian he was pretty brainy. He was an intelligent guy, and like his name got misspelled on the weightlifting binder's brain, and that just stuck. I mean, that was it. That was the perfect. So Brain had the Monty Burns, you know, where you kind of like you shave it like bald, like as if you're bald. And then he comes walking into a lecture. It was like a 300 person lecture at Berkeley. And like, instead of being like, you know, kind of like nonchalant and chill, like he walks like right in front of the lecture with just his Monty Burns haircut. And people were just like, who is this guy?
Yeah. Just not even thinking that he didn't look right. Oh man.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, kind of getting back into the lacrosse. So, you know, one thing we didn't really like, at least not me, I've gotten more into it since I've been coaching, is now it's like the mental game, kind of working with goalies on the mental game. We didn't really talk about that all that much. Was that something you practice or worked on as a college goalie?
Again, going back to camp, there was actually like a mental section of camp. So you get broken up by age, by skill, and then you do stations. And one of the stations was like a mental thing. It was John Yeager. He was friends with Kevin Hicks, but he was a sports psychologist back, you know, 94, 92, 93. No one's talking about like sports psychology as seriously as they do now.
Right.
But I remember once the one thing, and I'm probably going to get this wrong because it's been so long ago, but it was like, okay, something bad happens to you on the field. Play it back in your head like you're watching it on TV and turn off the TV.
Mm.
It's kind of, it's over. Forget about it, move on to the next thing. And I'm probably making that way less sophisticated or knowledgeable than what they told us, but that's what I remember from it. It's like, all right, let's just, it's almost as layman as like people say, oh, flush the toilet and let's move on to the next thing. But it was kind of like that in better terms. It's like, okay, replay that in your mind, what just happened, and then turn it off.
Yeah.
Relive what just happened and then get rid of it. And that's kind of what I rode, during that time.
Yeah. Of course, it's much easier said than done. I remember this one game. I mean, you talked about having all those friends, or maybe not friends, but a lot of, ex teammates that went to Sonoma State. And I remember this one game where I think it was my freshman year, and they went on like a 3-4 goal run, and the crowd is just chanting Robbie. And each time they score, like, it got louder and louder. And that had to be pretty tough to deal with, as a goalie, huh?
It is, but I know half those guys. I knew half their issues. I knew why they're not on the field and they're on the sideline as a fan. Like, we had better things to do that day, and it was to win the game, not worry about those guys. It's it goes both ways at times, but you get the good cheers and the bad cheers, but you just got to keep going. Like, you just drown it out. If you let something like that get in your head, everything's going to get in your head.
Oh,
Everything.
I mean, as soon as the crowd kind of, or the other team kind of picks up on the fact that they're like starting to get into your head, like it's working, then they just like,
that's when it goes downhill. Yeah.
Oh, they ramp, it goes downhill for you. And then the crowd just ramps it up. I mean, it's blood in the water, and they're sharks.
Yeah. You gotta ignore that and just keep going.
Yeah.
Did we win that game?
I don't remember.
Maybe not.
I don't remember. Yeah.
That's Sonoma, so the grass was probably 8 inches thick and muddy.
Yeah. And that might have been, I don't know, might have been, if it was early on in the season, it might have been one of the first games my parent, because I'm from Santa Rosa, where, and Sonoma State's right there, where my parents came, and they're like, man, these guys are really hard on the goalies. Are you sure you want to sign up for this?
Sure you want to be one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sonoma, Santa Barbara.
Yeah, those are some great games. We had some good rivalries against BYU too. I remember my freshman year, you made 31 saves in a game against BYU, which is, I think, still the record, right?
For the tournament? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
What was going on in that game? Just seeing the ball well?
Yeah, and we had a weird strategy that game. They had a crease attackman that scored a ton of goals, and Proud put Wiley on him, shut him down. So short stick on attackman back then, odd.
Yeah, right.
I've done it since then, in coaching, but like shut down, shut him off type thing. And so, and they would run everything through him. And I think it really disrupted like the way their game plan or the way they were set up to play. Probably got a lot more outside shots than I normally would, in that game. But yeah, that was a fun one for everybody because we were like the last seed that year, and BYU was the first seed, and we had to play with, I think we played Auburn that first game, and then and played BYU and knocked them off. But that was just a great game. I think the whole team, like, no way we should have won that game. After losing all those seniors, and basically had a huge sophomore class, and then some juniors, seniors, and some freshmen. But it was a very young team, and to win that game was pretty epic.
Yeah.
By everybody. Like Wiley had 99% sure he won the game ball on that one because he shot. I think the guy had like one goal And he was scoring like 4 a game.
Man, over your 31 saves. We'll give it to him. Give it to Wiley. You still keep in contact with those guys, Wiley, Wilsey?
I not too much. For the national championship game, we did have Jake Zim, who was a senior my year, Wiley. We had a little crew at that game. I was there because it was the Hall of Fame thing, but we, once they made the championship, there was definitely a couple guys that, did what they did. Like we had guys flying in that morning, flying out as soon as the game was over, just in the game, they just wanted to be there.
Yeah.
So that was really cool seeing that, but more so like guys from my class. And I'm sure it's with everybody in their class, like with you and Matt.
Right.
Yeah,
I still keep in contact with Greg and Mav, Mander, Smitty.
Yeah.
Those guys, some of my best buds.
Yeah.
Awesome. You kind of casually dropped in the Hall of Fame thing there. So when was that? In 2000, I guess the inaugural year of the MCLA Hall of Fame, you were elected. So congratulations. That's an awesome accomplishment.
Yeah, it was an honor.
Yeah. How did that come about? How did you first kind of learn about that?
Through an email.
Congrats, you're in the email.
Congrats, you're in the Hall of Fame. First ever we decided to do this type thing.
Yeah. Are they still doing it?
Yeah, well, they did it in 2020, and then obviously the season got shut down.
Yeah.
They didn't do it this year.
Got it.
I think they just put it on pause for a year. There's a whole class with Dominic Gomez from Sonoma, goalie from Sonoma. He's in that 2020 class. So they delayed it. They obviously didn't have a tournament, so they're going to honor them. Hopefully they honor them after the 2022 and have a whole 2022 class come in. It's pretty cool though. I was thinking about it when we were getting ready for this talk. The first election board were people that work for the MCLA. And I got elected by Coach Lamb of BYU, Coach Paul of Michigan, Coach Hughes of Sonoma, and Coach Carl of Sonoma. Could you name 4 bigger rivalries that we had at Cal?
Right.
And those are the guys that brought me into the first Hall of Fame. So I thought that was probably one of the coolest things about it, is like these guys that we had feuds with over the years were the ones that nominated me for that class. So that was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. It's like, even though it's like the biggest competition and they're probably kind of hate us on the field, they recognize the talent and the great career that you had. So that's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So now you walk around and be like, hey, I'm a Hall of Famer.
My family. So my wife's family, now my family, they think it's a joke. They don't realize. They'll tell someone like, oh, he's in the Lacrosse Hall of Fame. I'm like, I'm not in the Lacrosse Hall of Fame. I'm in the MCLA Hall of Fame. Or they go, the Rob Warner? He's in the Hall of Fame. It's like, right. No, I'm in the MCLA Hall of Fame, which is a very, very great honor. But when they tell someone they barely know that I'm in the Hall of Fame, they assume I'm in, the U.S. lacrosse.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's all the same. It's kind of like if you're an honorable mention All-American, like you're an All-American. You don't have to like put that
on your resume.
I'm an All-American goalie. I'm a Hall of Fame goalie. When you go to your coaching clinics, and you mentioned you're still doing some coaching here and there, a little bit. We'll fly up to Washington pretty soon.
Yeah.
Cool. Is that goalie specific, or you're just kind of working with lacrosse?
I've kind of, over my years coaching, 2002, 2003, when I coached at Cal, and I coached through the MCLA pretty much nonstop from then till 2015 or 16. So I did about 13 years in the MCLA coaching.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was as a head coach. So, I've kind of learned how to do more than just goalie, but nowadays it's all goalie specific. Yeah. Used to run like a goalie shooting camp with a buddy out of Memphis, which was really fun. So you never want to be in a shooting drill if you're a goalie, but we were able to like design drills that could incorporate both. So that was really cool. We did that for about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
When you were a head coach, and I coached a Berkeley youth team kind of after, so I got some head coaching experience, but I always wanted to work with the goalies. Like, that was kind of where my passion was. When you were a head coach, like, how did you go about kind of balancing like all the other team's needs, but still making sure like the goalies get their training in?
Like I said, at USD, we were lucky because we usually have like one goalie. So that was like warm-up time.
Okay.
Warm-ups, that good portion of warm-ups. And then I always had like an offensive coach, a defensive coach, and then kind of a hybrid coach that could do whatever. So I spent a lot of time, during 6-on-6, things like that, focusing on the goalie. Because I knew my offensive coordinator was going to, run the offense, things like that. So a lot of time on the goalie, I'd probably say 60% on the goalie, 40 on the team. Just making sure, if things were off. There's days though where he's looking good, so I'm not going to just be in him all day. As a goalie, I didn't want someone personally. I didn't want Proud or a high school coach being on me all practice. I want to do my thing and work on it myself. So if we were having a good day at goalie, I wouldn't give him much attention after warm-ups and after, hey, your step or working on things like that. Kind of give them sorry, I should have got to this. I give them a plan in the beginning of the day. All right, hey, you're not stepping very well today in warm-ups. Like your step's way off. Let's make that our focus today. Yeah. I want you to have a good, 45-degree angle step where your angles are real off. Let's make sure we work on that today and be really aware. I'd give them kind of a pointer for that day during warm-ups on how they were playing. And it would just even also be like outlets. Like, hey, I want you to push fast breaks in practice today. Like you look good in warm-up. Let's make today be like a fast break day, or you need to get better at, your talk. So today I want to hear you all day in cage. So I kind of give them a pointer after warm-ups, see where they're at, where they are mentally that day, where they are in their technique that day, and it'd be like, this is what we're going to work on today. Just kind of like I do when I do a camp, I'll do a little session with the goalie, and it'd be like, okay, this session is step. And I'm like, I don't care what you do today. I don't care how many saves you make today. I want you to concentrate on your step. That's all I want you to think about today. I don't care if you let every ball in, but if you feel like you made a good step, I want you to concentrate. I want you to come away with this session is you really worked on this step or angle or off hip. You can't teach somebody everything in one session. So it's like, let's take something away from that session and make that the focus of the rest of practice or the rest of the day at camp. Because if you say, hey, okay, your hands need to be here, you need to step this way, your angle's off, your arc's off, and you throw all that at one guy on a kid and then expect him to remember every single thing that you just told him for the rest of the day, it's not going to happen. Right. So it's again, make it as easy as possible. What are we doing? Okay, so the first hour of camp is 6-on-6. We just had a goalie session. We talked about your step. I don't care where your hands are. I don't care where you are in the goal. Make the right step. Next session, we'll work on your hands. But this session, we're doing step. Next session after that, we're doing arc. You can't throw everything at somebody in a 20-minute period and expect them to retain it. You got to focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah, 100% agree. And that could be really strong for the mental game too, because, even though, a young goalie's giving up a lot of goals, they can ask themselves like, did I do that thing that I'm focused on? Like say if it's stepping, like, did I make the right step? Yeah, I gave up the goal. No problem. Did I make the right step? Let's just
Yeah.
focus on that. And that can be really powerful for just, one piece at a time.
Yeah.
Because I totally agree.
And that's the thing with practice too, is like, that's where, is like, if you're a head coach and you're also the goalie coach and we're working on a step and goalie's flat, you're not making the right step. You're flat, you're flat, you're flat. All I have to do is give that goalie one thing, step, hey, your step. And that's all he needs is a trick. I don't have to go in there and say, you were wrong here, you were wrong here, you're wrong here. I can be on the sideline getting a shot of water and be like, hey, Damon, your step's off there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can, then that mentally be like, yeah, it was flat there. Okay, let me get refocused and make sure I make the, the correct step. You even do that if he makes a save. Like, hey, good save, but your step was off. That's what we're focusing on. You didn't make the right step. And it goes to all points of goalie play. If you focus on that, if you focus on something a day, I think that's the best way to do it, because you're not critiquing goalie in 15 different ways.
Yeah, love it.
It's like, okay, we'll move to art later.
Right. Or just the million other things that there are, that you got to think about, like running a defense or, being a great communicator, clears, stick handling, all this stuff. There's a lot to consider into this position. So goes back to simplicity.
Yep.
I love it. Well, Rob, man, great to see you. This has been so much fun.
Awesome.
Again, thanks for, teaching me everything I know and get me started in the goalie position. And, man, great to see you. And,
good to see you.
If people want to attend that camp, is there that you're doing up in Washington? Is it sold out, or should we?
Yeah, it's next week. It's more of a hometown kind of small town.
Gotcha.
Camp.
Gotcha. Are you on any of the social medias if people want to follow you?
No.
All right.
Sorry, long story short.
Contact me if you got questions for Rob.
Contact Damon. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There you go. Well, Rob, like I said, great to see you, and hope to talk soon.
Thanks for having me.